On June 28th, Darryl Glenn and Beth McCann scored with somewhat surprising victories in their respective primary races. Glenn defeated 4 opponents, 2 of which spent over $1 million in the primary. Meanwhile, McCann defeated Kenneth Boyd and Michael Kerrigan, who were both considered favorites in that race. Craig, let's start with Darryl Glenn. He's underfunded. Facing Michael Bennet. He has no interest in working across the aisle, at least so far, and the RNC has already said that they're not going to be spending a lot of money for his race. If he wanted an underdog story, he certainly has one. What do you think about his chances?
Well, he's also, let's face it, undersized. He'll talk about that. He's 5'4".
As somebody close to his size, I will say he's normal size.
The thing is, he's comfortable in his own skin, which happens to be African American. He's a little bit of an unstoppable force of nature. I've gotten to know him pretty well. He's been on my show 3 times. I introduced him at the Conservative Summit last Saturday night. He's a native son of Colorado, went to the Air Force Academy, one of our most respected institutions. I like the fact that he went on to law school. He's run a small business, and believe it or not, in a law firm, you have to pay your staff, you have to pay taxes. These are things that Michael Bennet really hasn't done. Michael Bennet ran Denver Public Schools, and he could give Michael Bennet some problems. Darryl Glenn was also a champion power lifter. I think he could really help Donald Trump. I can just see the picture of him deadlifting Donald Trump and maybe get a kick out of it.
That's one hell of a lift,
Trump
Craig.
could use Glenn. Trump could use Glenn, and Glenn could use Trump if they can work together. And they say a lot of the same things about borders, and I think support of the police is going to be a big issue. If we can, move on to Beth McCann. It's a broad topic, but I've known Beth since I walked into the Denver DA's office. She was a chief deputy on the 2nd floor. You know, she's one of my superiors. Her getting the job, and she's this close to it, is like, you know, Captain Ahab finally harpooning Moby Dick. It's unbelievable how long she's wanted the job, and now finally, she not only won, she won big. And who is her co-star? My friend Rhonda Fields. Rhonda Fields did an advertisement for her that was extremely effective, and it beat the support that Michael Kerrigan had for Michael Hancock, Wellington Webb, and of course his children supported him. That ad was cute, but I don't think it was effective in hindsight. There is Helen Morgan in the way. She's trying to pull a Craig and run as an independent. She does have a couple of advantages, though. She's still in the office, and there is no incumbent, but it's hard to believe that anybody but a Democrat will win in Denver.
Eric, the primaries, by definition, always affect the general election, but specifically here, when you have a Senate race, a statewide race, and you have Darryl Glenn coming out of it, it sounds to me it's going to affect the general election broader than just the Senate race. What do you think?
I'll take exception. I mean, Craig said some things I agree with, but when you refer to Darryl Glenn as an unstoppable force, he's going to be stopped here. I don't think it's unstoppable, and I don't think he's that much of a force. I don't dismiss his honor, but I don't think what this state or I don't think what the country needs or what Colorado wants is another ardent, passionate, take no prisoners, refuse to work across the aisle kind of conservative. Michael Bennet has to be one of the luckiest politicians. We were talking before the show taped around, I mean, in 2010, a very tough year for Democrats that he narrowly survived. He drew Ken Buck, who dissembled. He's since recovered a nice political career, but dissembled in that race instead of Jane Norton, who would have won, in my mind, that race rather easily. Here in 2016, which looks to be a better year, that Bennet would probably survive against any challenger, but to draw Darryl Glenn, Colorado, in my mind these days, at least for 2016, is probably not a purple state. I do not think we are going to be the national target either at the presidential level or the U.S. Senate level that we are used to being for the past number of election cycles. And I think Michael Bennet will win this race handily. Quickly on the DA's race, I don't regard this, per your question, Dominic, as a huge upset. I expected Beth McCann to win, mainly because the biggest constituency in Denver Democratic politics is women. It is not lost on me. Look who has represented Denver in Congress for the last half century. Pat Schroeder, Diana DeGette. Women run the Denver Democratic Party. Yes, there are other important constituencies, but they pale in comparison. I will be interested to see how the race unfolds in the fall. I think Helen Morgan, from all accounts, I do not know her, is a very credible candidate, a very accomplished prosecutor. Can that independent appeal, the notion of independent justice as opposed to partisan justice, can it get enough traction in an overwhelmingly Democratic city? Beth McCann has all the advantages.
Justine, it looks like in the DA's race we have in Beth McCann somebody who's at least trying to run a little bit on the outside. She's already said that she is against the death penalty, not within the current office. And you have Helen Morgan, who is within the current office. Do you think it's going to come down to a referendum on what Denverites feel about Mitch Morrissey?
I mean, it could. Personally, when Beth won, I was personally excited because if she elected, she'll be Denver's first female DA. But I'm not sure why it was such a surprise that Beth came out ahead, because I think that Beth is definitely well known in the community, and the community elected her. I remember back in the 90s, Beth from the Denver Safe City program, where she was working with youth proactively to avoid people from getting into the legal system in the first place. And I think when it comes to the primaries in Denver, you have the old school Democrats out there voting, and they know Beth, and they've worked with Beth, and they're gonna make sure that, and they made sure she got elected to the nominee this time. And I think she'll be a good bridge between the community and between the DA's office, because there's definitely been issues, in the past, and she'll be a good bridge between them and the community.
Patty, I'll stop calling it an upset. I guess which outcome between the Republican primary and the Democratic DA primary surprised you more?
I don't think it was a surprise that Beth McCann won or that Darryl Glenn won. What was a surprise was the numbers. That Beth McCann got over 50%, that was surprising, because you know what, Denver can tell the difference. You don't just vote by gender. You vote for qualifications, you vote for a variety of reasons, maybe because you're influenced by the money that was spent on ads. Certainly Michael Kerrigan had plenty of money, but he also has a good reputation as a lawyer, as does Kenneth Boyd. So that she got more than 50% of the vote was surprising. And as we know, we now will definitely have a female DA, depending I'm not sure who it'll be, but I'm glad there's going to be a competitive race. So we'll really be able to hear from Beth McCann. And people didn't pay a lot of attention to the DA's race about what they were really talking about. I think we will now. The fact that Darryl Glenn, we were talking before that somebody in the high 20s might be able to take it, that he got in the high 30s was interesting, that he really got a big vote. I don't think he's going to get, maybe that's how much he's going to get in the next election, because he is still very conservative socially, and in Colorado, I don't think that's going to play.